All right, so today I wanted to talk about carbon sources, and so one example of this would be this nice pile of leaves that I'm laying in here, which you can see. And I just kind of want to talk about different types of carbon, my thoughts on sourcing carbon. I'm kind of always chasing carbon out here. It's tough to find enough for what I want to do. And just little nuances about using carbon. For me, it's really for mulch, and for composting, and a little bit for pathways and stuff like that. Those are kind of my main uses for carbon sources out here. And I just gotta say, I might have to yell a little bit because it's kind of windy out here today. Leaves and wood chips are my favorite carbon sources, and with the leaves, this has to be leaves collected in the fall when they're brown. If they're collected green, they're gonna be a lot higher in nitrogen and other, nutrients and whatnot, water and all that. You really, for carbon sources, you want the fall leaves, where most of the nutrients have been pulled back into the tree and you're left mostly with carbon. So carbon, carbon, carbon. Have I said that enough times? You're gonna hear me say carbon a lot in this video. But like I said, I've had a tough time getting carbon. I've been down here on this site for almost a year, and a little bit less than a year, and I just now feel like I'm starting to get carbon coming in on a regular basis. And kind of what prompted me to make this video is that I got this pile of wood chips dropped off today, and I think there's a lot more. But that, it was only 2 days ago I got this pile of leaves dropped off, and about 3 weeks ago I got the sawdust, which isn't a lot. This I just hauled with my own truck. Doesn't fit a ton, but I have not an endless supply, but I can get as much of this as I want from this sawmill nearby. So I guess, I'm pretty far out from the nearest town, and so that is what makes it so hard to get carbon. If you live near a town, suburbs, city, anything like that, there's usually a excess of wood chips and leaves because there's always trees getting cut down in those highly populated areas. And every fall, everybody blows their leaves off their yard, which, don't get me started on that. That's a whole nother topic. But if they're going to do it, we're going to at least try to use the leaves that they get rid of. And so what I'm trying to say is, I have tried to form relationships with tree companies and with the municipalities that collect leaves to try to get them to drop on my site. I'm a little bit too far for most of them. It's just not convenient. It's too much time in the truck and too much fuel for them to really send their guys out here to dump. They can find closer places. But so if you do live close to town, reaching out to local municipalities, right? The solid waste department oftentimes can direct you to where you want to go to get leaves, maybe wood chips. Calling around local tree companies, even just being on the lookout, right? When you're driving around or when you're taking a walk, just when you're out near your land, you see a tree company nearby, a few blocks, a mile or two away, go talk to them. That your site might be closer for them to dump than driving to the dump site that they're planning to use. So maybe it can work out for both of you. Another option is you can try Chip Drop, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. Chip Drop, it's like a website. You sign up, it's supposed to connect arborists with people who want wood chips, and you can also get logs through Chip Drop. So if you're into firewood or you want logs for mushroom production or whatever, you could potentially get logs. I have not had luck with Chip Drop or reaching out to municipalities and tree companies, like I said. I found that I've had to basically work my network, is what I would call it. So you can see the darker color wood chips here. These are remnants of older piles that I've gotten dropped. So when I first got here, I talked to my neighbor. I said, I'm looking for wood chips. He happened to know a tree company that's right down the road. Now, they're pretty small, and they network with a lot of farms around here, so a lot of people want their wood chips. But because I'm right up the road, and a neighbor, he's brought me 2 loads in the time that I've lived here over the past year, which is huge. I need more than that, but that is still huge. So most of these wood chips here are remnants from those loads. A lot of it has been used in mulch as I've planted trees out and, where I'm doing some composting experiments and stuff. But some of those wood chips are here, aging and breaking down. And you can see we've got mushrooms popping up. These are pearl oysters, I believe, from, I don't know, I don't think I made a video about this yet on my YouTube, but on my TikTok I've talked about and shown what I did here was I spread a bunch of spent oyster mushroom spawn, a few other species, from a mushroom cultivator nearby, and I just spread them out with some wood chips and kind of mixed them all up. And that was a few months ago now. We've had a few flushes of oyster mushrooms come out since then, which is really cool. But This fresh stuff I got today from a different tree company, a bigger operation that does a lot of the power line clearing, which gets me back to working the network, you know. So, you know, my first stop when I got here and I didn't know anybody was neighbors, and that got me so far. And, you know, I'm sure that relationship's going to continue, and I'll occasionally get loads from this guy down the road. Then, after I'd exhausted municipalities, which I guess you could, that is kind of networking, right? Like trying to, but I don't know that any of these municipalities personally. I wound up, there's a pile of leaves here at the end of this row of compost. Kind of, it's probably tough to tell, but like this third of the pile, that's straight leaves. That way is like kind of unfinished compost. And the leaves came from a friend of mine. It's actually kind of a group, and they run a CSA farm that's a lot closer to town. And I go over there, you know, somewhat regularly and kind of volunteer in exchange for veggies and just hang out. And you know, it's a whole community over there. And it's actually an eco village is getting started up over there. But anyway, since they're closer to town, they've been able to get the township to drop them off leaves in the fall, and they quickly amassed a mountain, much more leaves than they need. And they're happy to share. They have a tractor to load me up. So every time that I roll over there, maybe not every time, but oftentimes when I roll over there, they'll load my truck up and I can come back and shovel leaves out of the back of my truck. I have a friend of the family who lives down here who has a dump truck. It's a small old dump truck. You know, he has a small landscaping business. And he, you know, pulled a favor for me. And so this load I just got this dropped off the other day from him with his dump truck, which is much easier and holds more than me shoveling out of the back of my truck over there. So that's what these leaves came from. You know, also another thing you can do is you can go around and pick up bags of leaves on the curb in the fall. A lot of people bag their leaves. Some people just, you know, blow them out to the curb, but some people bag them up. The bags are nice because you can just scoop them up, put them in your car or your truck, and drive off with them. I'll admit I didn't do that as much this fall as I would have liked to. I think I kind of missed some opportunities there. I had a lot going on. It was just a really busy time. And so, you know, I'll be ready for next year, hopefully. So that's kind of leaves, is like working your network. For me, I got lucky that there was a farm that I knew closer to the town that was able to get leaves from the township. I guess another thing is through talking to the Public Works Department, they told me sometimes they have to go drop off at a commercial site. They prefer to just drop off at residences, but sometimes they have to go to commercial sites a little further away. Still not as far as I am. And they gave me that contact information, so I was able to call them, and if I was willing to pay, I could get loads of leaves or loads of leaf compost delivered from them in a triaxle. So, you know, if I really needed a lot of material and I wanted to pay, I could. Gives me access to leaves, which I wouldn't be able to get from a typical, you know, landscape mulching supply company that's just going to have that ground dyed hardwood mulch. Sometimes they have undyed, but you get the point. All right, so back to talking about wood chips. It's been harder to find anyone in my network with wood chips. What I have found, you know, with a lot of things have happened for me really in the last few weeks. I mean, like a week ago, there's another farm that I sometimes go and am involved with. I'm actually going to probably start volunteering there more frequently, helping out with their compost operation. They're trying to get their compost, on-farm composting going, you know, really vigorously. They're very ambitious about their on-farm composting plans. They're a much bigger farm, so it's a much bigger operation compared to the place where I get the leaves from. Now they're also further away from me, and like I said, I'm not there as often, so I haven't gotten any material from them yet, but they just started receiving wood chips and leaves by the triaxle load, and so they're quickly getting to a point where they have plenty to share, and they've said, you know, if I can arrange hauling, they would be willing to give me the material for free. So that's huge. I need to find someone with a bigger dump truck. The friend I had that helped me haul the leaves with his dump truck, that's a kind of a small dump truck, and I feel like for how much further we're going and how much material they have, it'd be more worth my while to try to secure a larger truck, which I have no idea how I'd go about doing that as of right now. I might have to hire someone, but, you know, we'll see if I need the material or not. It's just another option. I think, well, really what prompted me to make this whole video was an experience I had just today trying to get these wood chips delivered. And that is, you know, I'm always on the lookout for when the tree companies are working nearby. And this is something I did back in the suburbs. This is something I do now that I'm here out in the country, is like, if I hear the wood chipper going, if I pass road crews doing tree work anywhere within a few miles of my place, I'll stop and pull over and try to talk to them and see if they're willing to load here. A lot of the times they are, because it's saving them time, right? It's making their job more convenient. A lot of the times these guys might have to pay to dump. Not only are they driving somewhere else, they might have to pay to dump. Not always, but I'm free. They can dump here for free. And so what I've noticed though, I've tried many times where I've stopped on the side of the road, talked with the guys, given them my address, told them I'm looking for wood chips and whatnot. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll bring you some. And then they never show and they never call. And this is, I'm not blaming them. I'm not saying it's their fault. These guys are working really busy jobs, right? They're very busy. There's a lot going on. And it probably just wasn't convenient for them to bring out the wood chips. But one thing that I have kind of, anytime that it has worked, getting the wood chips for me in that method, it's because I talked to whoever was in charge. I think the guys in charge, typically they have a little more time to think about stuff like where they're going to dump. They're a little bit, I don't know. The guys on the ground doing the bulk of the physical work, like they're under a lot of pressure, right? They're very busy. Their priority is doing that part of the job. And so I've found in my experience recently, this may change, that what I try to look for now is, who's the guy sitting in the truck? The guy who looks like he's not doing physical work, he might be sitting in the truck, he might be kind of standing back watching, maybe he's got a white hard hat on or something. That's typically who I try to talk to if I can, just because I feel like in my experience, trying to do that has gotten me the wood chips more, Anyway, I mean, that's a small nuance, and this is not to say that I ignore the field guys, right? I'll definitely talk to them, and I just try, I'm trying to make things as convenient for the crew as possible. I'm trying to be as least disruptive of their day and trying to just provide a benefit for both of us, And so that's kind of, I was just thinking about that. I was so excited that these wood chips got here, and then it hit me. I was like, wow, like, I talked to the foreman or whatever his title is, and it was so easy. The wood chips just showed up, and I was just like, man, all these other times it hasn't happened. Like, I wonder if that's because of who I talked to, or if it's just coincidence. Like, it wasn't convenient for that crew that day. The other thing is, this is the second time I've gotten a load from this specific foreman. I've actually bumped into him on the road twice now in the past 4 or 5 months. And so we're kind of establishing a rapport, building a little relationship. And we've got each other's contact information now. I think that's another important thing, is expressing to them how much you can take. Sometimes they want to know how many loads can you take, have your address ready, and you want to be able to be there to point to them where to dump. They can't wait when they get there. And so having, good access and a clear spot to dump, I think that goes a long way as well. And like with this guy, I told him, hey, we can take as many loads as we can fit in this area. I want a lot of loads. So I don't know, just kind of rambling on. So the last thing I'll talk about with carbon is sawdust. And I'll just, before I get into that, I'll say, like, wood chips and leaves are my favorite, which I may have said already, because you don't really have to be very careful with them. You can use them as mulch, you can mix them into compost, you can use them as pathways. The only thing you really have to be concerned with is that fresh wood chips from any type of evergreen tree, and often like, oaks and black walnuts, these types of trees, they have within their wood, within their tissue, they have antibiotic compounds that make them rot resistant. So any rot resistant wood is going to have these compounds. They are organic compounds. They will break down. It's not the same as a pesticide or an herbicide, but they will have a small biocidal effect. So what I'm trying to say is, fresh wood chips from certain species are not the best to use as mulch. It's really, if you're going to be using mulch wood chips, it's best to age them a little bit. And also, even for composting, if you're going to mix them into a compost pile, it's best if they're aged a little bit from certain types of trees. If it's all you got, try it out, see what happens. I don't think it's really the end of the world. I've definitely used fresh pine for things that people say you shouldn't, and I seem to have been okay. I haven't killed any plants or anything from mulching. And yeah, that's kind of the only caveat with wood chips. Anyway, the other carbon source that I have available to me that I'll talk about is sawdust, which I'm sitting next to a pile of sawdust here. Sawdust, you do have to be careful mulching and composting with it, because it's very finely ground up, right? Because of that, it compacts really easy. And when it compacts, it can actually repel, if you mulch with sawdust, you can actually repel water and trap gases. You won't have good gas exchange, good oxygen infiltration into the soil or water. Same thing in a compost pile, right? This can make it hard for your compost pile to breathe or to receive moisture if you're watering it. So I really like to use sawdust in small quantities or as pathways, because my pathways would be compacted anyway if I was just walking on them bare. And the sawdust is a little bit more comfortable to walk on, and it will break down over time and, help build soil life. So, let me talk about where I got this. Is another, working the network type thing. Like, I just started calling around to wood shops and sawmills in the area. They're oftentimes looking to get rid of this stuff, and they oftentimes have equipment to load you up. So this is the type of deal where I just load it up into my truck. Well, he loads me up with his equipment in my truck. I come here and shovel it out. This is actually the first load I got from this particular sawmill. Close by, really nice guy, small local operation. And he's got almost endless supplies of this stuff. So as I start using it, I'll just go and get more whenever I need it. And like I said, this will be for pathways. And I think another cool thing I'll talk about is like, I am, with carbon, I'm trying to hydrate it, right? I'm kind of always, a lot of the times your carbon comes dry, whether it's leaves, wood chips, whatever. A lot of the times it comes dry. If you want to use it as mulch or compost, it can be beneficial to start hydrating it before you use it. For pathways, it kind of doesn't really matter. But so you can see that this pile kind of has a flat top, and then it has these this lip here. That's me trying to catch water. You can see that out over there, the leaf pile is pretty flat, kind of, a little bit of a bowl shape going on in the center. That's again to try to catch water on the leaves. Pyramid shaped wood chip pile that I actually need to go do some work flattening out to try to catch the rain that's coming in the next few days. But that can help you catch a little bit of rainwater instead of just sheeting it off. Just a little nuance there.